works with states, about 25 of them at this point, to establish and enhance partnerships among state departments, IHEs, school districts, and other key stakeholders, depending on the state. These partnerships work together to achieve CEEDAR's mission by aligning professional and policy structures. That is to influence and reform preparation programs, to refine and influence and even support the revision of state standards, such as licensure, program approval, all with a purpose to align across systems. For those of you who might not be familiar with CEEDAR, I would urge you, and I was remiss in not putting the website up here. It's a simple website. If you go to the University of Florida CEEDAR, you can find the center site. It's just chock full of various resources related to knowledge, briefs, all kinds of tools that might support work in educator preparation programs and so forth. Thanks, Kate, just put it in the chat, CEEDAR.org. With that, let me just, if we'll go to the next slide, tell you that we have a group as part of our CEEDAR work in California who are working a great deal to put on this series, and you'll see the names there. Eric, who introduced himself earlier, and then Amy Hanreddy, Rebekka Jez, Sarah Juarez, and Lynn Larson, all working to produce this 5-part series. So with that, I will turn it over to Lynn to introduce our speaker.
I think that's actually my pleasure.
For you, I'm sorry.
No problem. And it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Lidiana Portales Blair. You can see her bio there. I don't need to read it for you, but we're really excited to hear from her today. She's the coordinator for the Urban Dual Credential Program at Cal State Long Beach. And I am looking forward to hearing about this and learning what I can take back to my own programs. So without any further ado, Lidiana, welcome.
Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate being here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share so that I can go through. All right, so I'm going to be talking to you about our program today. 1 second, please. Making sure. Can you see my screen that says Urban Dual Credential Program? Okay, fantastic. All right. I was just teaching a class with actually UDCP students, and I went to go put them in breakout rooms and actually ended our session. So, you know, technology during these virtual times, it's an interesting thing. So anyway, I'm here to talk to you about the UDCP program. Thank you so much for the event coordinators. We're really excited to be here. So I'm going to start off today talking about an overview of the program and how we structure our program. Then I'll come back to the central questions for today, which is how we are trying to promote equity and social justice, and how collaborating with our district partnership is helping us with that. And then I'll talk about the learning process we've had with the dual credential program, all the growing pains and learning curves we've gone through. So UDCP is currently in its 6th year of operation, and we will soon be admitting our 7th cohort. And so we're really excited. It's hard to believe. So we're a new program. We're a baby program. I guess we're more of a toddler program because we're up and walking. I have 2 young kids. They're 1 and 5, so I tend to talk in a lot of kid metaphors. But our program was co-developed by faculty with expertise in multicultural education, teaching English learners in literacy, collaboration, and special education. I'll add that I was not part of the original team that created UDCP. I came in on the 2nd year of the program as I was finishing my doctorate. At the time, I was working as a curriculum specialist, focusing on English learner instruction and working with a lot of new beginning teachers at a local district. But I really saw the need for a dual credential program, and it was clear to me the great value of it, because working with so many new teachers and remembering back to my own early days of teaching, I was a gen ed teacher for many years. I think everyone can benefit from more preparation in being able to reach all learners, especially culturally and linguistically diverse students and students with special needs. So it was such an intriguing program that I went ahead and made the leap from K-12 over to higher ed. And I'm really glad I did. And like everyone here today, at UDCP, we're really passionate about growing that next generation of teachers who can be really innovative in the classroom. So we focus on 3 tenets: having collaborative, inclusive models of teaching and learning, research-based practices, and culturally responsive teaching. We are a 2-year program. So by the time our students graduate, they have over 1,000 hours of clinical practice under their belt. In the first year, they do 120 hours, and I'll talk about how that's structured. And then the second year, that is their student teaching year, and they do 900 hours across 2 semesters. So by the end, they are able to earn both a multiple subject and an education specialist credential, and the candidates are embedded in the same district for 2 years. And that's proven to be a really key part of our program. So I'll come back and talk about that. So I'll talk about what year 1 looks like, and then I'll talk about year 2. So we are a cohort program. So we only start in the semester with a group of students. Our cohort size is between 20 and 25 students. So they begin in the fall, they end 2 years later as a cohort. So 25 in, 25 out. So as you can imagine, they become very close by the end. From the beginning first week, the candidates are paired with veteran teachers in general education and special education, so they get hands-on experience right from the get-go. And the way it's structured is that they are in the classrooms Tuesday and Thursday morning from 8:30 to 10:30 in the morning, and then they take their classes beginning at 11 a.m. So their Tuesdays and Thursdays are pretty full days in that first year. So we have them in that first year. They have to observe their teacher. They also teach lessons with both small groups and whole class, and they also provide interventions to small groups as needed. And we offer their courses at the school site in the district. So instead of having the students drive back to the university, professors actually drive out to them, and we ask the district to provide a classroom on one of their campuses, and we all congregate at a school site to teach the courses. What's something a little bit special about our program is that our literacy course, which is a year-long course in that first year, is co-taught. So it is co-taught by someone with expertise in general education and someone else with special education expertise. So they get both sides of that coin. And those professors also supervise the students in the field. So when they are at their school classrooms Tuesday, Thursday morning, professors are going in. That way they can bring back the experiences back into the classroom. So if that week they're talking about reading comprehension, they can turn to someone and say, hey, Catherine, your master teacher has a really good way of doing that. Can you share with the class? So it becomes a very cohesive experience. So now moving into year 2, this is the student teaching year, and this is when they're really busy. They have 3 full days of student teaching and 2 half days, because on Tuesdays and Thursdays afternoons, they are still taking courses. And they do 1 semester in special education, and they choose either mild mod or mod severe. They can't do both, they do have to choose one. And then they do 1 semester in general education. While they're there, they're expected to be mini staff members. They attend staff meetings, any professional development, anything they're allowed to attend, we have them go do. So they have the full experience. A couple of things that they do in their student teaching year: we expect them to co-teach a lesson, to go through the whole process of, if they are, for example, in a gen ed placement, they pair up with a classmate who is doing their special education placement, and they team up to co-plan, co-teach, so they go through the experience of the co-teaching model. They are also expected to attend and hopefully even help lead an IEP meeting, both as a gen ed teacher and a special education teacher, and then lots of inclusive planning, and then tier 2 and tier 3 interventions as appropriate. So these are an overview of the courses that they take. So their special education classes are embedded. There's the language arts class I talked about. They do a diversity class in the very first semester. They do UDCP 402, which actually I have the pleasure of teaching, and I love teaching. And that diversity equity class becomes a big cornerstone for the whole program as we go along. And then, you know, our classroom management class is actually taught by someone who is a special education teacher, but her expertise is doing interventions that work in the gen ed classroom. So they really get both sides. And then their student teaching courses at the end. So selecting a district partner, you know, probably the most important part of all of this. We try to find partners that really have those best practices, that are doing RTI, PBIS, doing SATs. Obviously, we're not going to find a perfect district that's doing all of it, but we've been very fortunate that we've had some long-term partners now. We have partnered with the Little Lake City School District, which is in LA County, and then Garden Grove Unified, which is Orange County, because being in at Cal State Long Beach, we straddle those two counties. All right, so as promised, I'm going to circle back to the central question. How are we leveraging collaboration within our program to promote equity and social justice? So as I mentioned, we've really found that district partnership that continues for 2 years has proven to be a really important part of this. Because the candidates are in the same district for 2 years, they are very immersed and very enmeshed in the community. They will start and end the year at the school site. We actually even try to keep them at the same school site, if at all possible. And we will even try to have them in year 2 pair up with a teacher they worked with previously. So there is a lot more immersion in it. So the candidates are attending everything, every family outreach event, you know, the back to school nights and the parent teacher conferences, but also any winter events or a Halloween parade. So they have lots of opportunities to meet families, talk to families. The kids obviously get really excited because they've seen these people for 2 years now, and they bring over their families to meet them. So they get to know what that community is like. And then they're also attending staff meetings, district trainings, and all of that. So they become familiar with both the school setting and how the school operates, and then also the greater school community. So the goal is that the funds of knowledge become concrete, not theoretical. Now, the first semester course in diversity and equity includes a community deep dive as a final project, where they have to go out and really identify all those great resources in the community. And that really becomes a foundation. So for example, in year 2, when they are doing their TPAs, a big part of the TPA is identify funds of knowledge. They always come back and they're confused and they go, I don't remember what this thing is. And we're able to say, remember, you did this in 402. Go back and look at your project. Now you're going to take what you learned about community and see how it applies to your particular students right now. And so, as I mentioned, the courses are held on site at the school district. Instructors drive to the school and also immerse themselves in the school community. And I mean, I find that this is a really good kind of separation. You know, as I drive in, I feel like I'm very immersed. You know, I feel like I'm always coming home to my own background as a teacher. The schools are very similar to the schools I taught at, similar demographics, the communities feel different. So I feel like I'm coming home. And our instructors are also former teachers with experience teaching in schools with similar demographics. So it allows us all to feel very immersed in the community. Most of the instructors who teach in year 1 will also go on to supervise student teachers during year 2. So they also have that familiarity. We also get to know our student teachers really well, and we know their strengths and their needs and their quirks. And so, as I mentioned, culturally relevant teaching is a big tenet for our program. And it's just aided by the fact that everyone in this equation has a connection to the school community. And since we have been with the same district partners for several years, now most of our instructors have several years of familiarity with the community and how the district does things. Same thing with UDL, that's another big component. And so we understand how this district functions and what their goals are, and we kind of are able to align with all of that. So I just want to share really quickly some student quotes. We asked students to reflect when they graduate, and I will let you just read that to yourself. And one more real quick. All right, so as I mentioned, we are a cohort model, and they do become very tight knit by the end. In fact, when we ask them at the end of their program to reflect back and give us feedback, the number one thing they usually say, they talk about the friendships they made within their cohort, and they talk about how much support they receive within their cohort. So it really does create a professional learning community amongst the students, and their courses become a shared experience. So we never have to stop and wonder, well, what did you learn in your math methods class? What did you learn? They all took the same class. So we know exactly, and we know, who taught it and what their approach is. So the courses become shared experiences, shared language as well. And that cohort also becomes a space to share best practices and share how best to meet student needs. So, one student might come in and say, hey, I'm really having an issue with, this thing. And another student might say, oh, my master teacher has some really great strategies for that. And because they're in the same school community, it's very applicable. I've had the experience of maybe teaching in a different program where one student might be doing their observation hours in Manhattan Beach, another student might be doing observation hours, in Inglewood, and they're just very different experiences, and maybe it just doesn't translate as well. So it's really nice that we have a commonality and a shared language and shared understanding. And of course, that cohort goes on to become a support network for their beginning years of teaching, which we all know are really difficult years. And research tells us that's when the most attrition happens for teachers. So I just want to share one other quote. Couple more. All right, and so I want to talk about how our district partnerships help us with promoting equity and social justice. So the students have great opportunity to be able to participate in all the district professional developments that they are rolling out as they are being rolled out. So in the past, students have participated in professional development around PBIS, growth mindset, the next generation science standards, and they work alongside their teachers to learn how to implement these new initiatives. So they get to see all the bumpiness that happens when anything new is being rolled out. And they're able to, I think that when we talk about things theoretically, in our ivory tower, we say, oh, if all schools did this, then everything would be great. And students say, well, why doesn't everyone do this? I think they're able to see it in action and how it really goes. And of course, we can bring that back to the classroom and discuss it and talk to the students about, okay, so you're observing this. What are you going to do differently when you are the teacher in the classroom? How are you going to be a change agent for these good things going on? And then just more time teaching, because the student teachers have already established relationships with the teachers and the principals and the school secretaries. They feel much more comfortable, and that trusting relationship has already been established. So they're able to hit the ground running and start teaching earlier, and they're usually given more responsibility earlier on. Finally, feedback and communication. We do yearly meetings with our district partners, both with administrators and teachers, and they give us great feedback that we're able to take and implement to make program changes as we go along, because we ultimately both have the same goal in mind. We want to be turning out great teachers. And many of our candidates are ultimately hired by the school district, which may be the most rewarding thing ever when I come back to a school the next year and I see that one of my former student teachers is now the teacher in the classroom in charge. And that is such an amazing feeling. But the district has, been able to see these candidates in action for 2 years. They've vetted them really well. They've had them attend trainings. So they're getting teachers who are a little bit more ready and a little bit less green, less of a rookie, which, thinking back to my own first years, would have been so wonderful. What have we learned about with the dual credential program? Okay, so a couple of things that we've come across. So one is just making sure that we are very clear about our program to any prospective students. It's about recruiting the best candidates best suited for the program, because one, we are a longer program. It requires 2 semesters of student teaching, not just one, and we are a cohort model. So we have to be very honest, like, hey, a cohort model may not be everyone's cup of tea, but this is really great for people who like working collaboratively. 2 is we've done a little bit of cleaning up with our courses too. We found some redundancies. Again, because say UDL is such a big tenet of our program, we've embedded it on a lot of our courses, but now we have to be careful that we're not being redundant. So we've done some cleaning there. And then, getting data from our partners and implementing that has been really powerful. The next part, the alumni network, is actually something that we are trying to work on right now and bolster that. I think that, our alumni are some of the most enthusiastic, and they're really out there doing great things. And so we'd like to be able to harness that a little bit more and bring them back for alumni events to help us mentor our current students and also create a good, strong network so they can be a good network for each other. And then finally, I would say is that it's a little bit hard not fitting a mold. So we are a little bit of a unique program. So for example, we are going through the CTC accreditation for the first time as a program. And so we're still trying to figure out where we fit, because, are we here with ed specialists? Are we with multiple subject? It's not quite clear. All right, so that wraps up my presentation. I just want to say thank you to the event organizers and thank you to everyone who is here attending. Thanks so much.
Lidiana, I can't thank you enough for sharing about your program, and I think that this all is just so helpful for us as we're talking about how we can move statewide to follow these examples for critical collaboration and especially in dual credential programs. So to continue this conversation about critical collaboration, we're next going to invite 2 faculty from the University of San Diego. And I feel lucky that both of them have also been involved in our CEEDAR work, and we're glad to have them here sharing with us today. So Dr. Suzanne Stolz is an assistant professor of special education, and some of the things that kind of stood out in your bio to me, Suzanne, are all of the work that you've done related to disability studies and inclusive education. She's also the lead faculty member for the online Master's in Education program for Universal Design for Learning and Inclusive Education specialization. Dr. Rebekka Jez is on the team that coordinates these workshops. And again, we're grateful that you're here, Rebekka, and are able to have the role of a speaker and somebody to share about your program now. And Rebekka is also an assistant professor of special education. And Rebekka, as I was looking at your bio, I was really wanted to highlight your work in culturally responsive, inclusive practices. And I'm so excited to hear more. She's also the director of the Academy of Catholic Teaching Program, which is part of the University Consortium of Catholic Education. So welcome to both of you, and thank you for sharing.
Oh, does that mean I'm starting, Rebekka? I guess so. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Thanks. I was invited to talk about the way in our dual credential program we went about creating some new courses. As we began to think through the process of creating this dual credential program, one of the things that was really important to us was our concerns about the separation of general education and special education. And so we wanted to really integrate these at the course level, not just say students are going to take everything they need for the general ed credential and everything they need for the special ed credential, but to really say we need to be thinking about all students as we go through each of the courses in the program. And so I think back, and I actually would like to say too about my bio. My position is assistant professor of special education, but I was a general education teacher. And as I went back to grad school, I had become really interested in disability. And had thought through a lot of my own experience as a disabled student, and kind of used my teaching experience or my teaching K-12 to really think through some of what I had experienced as a K-12 student. And as I was in my own teacher credential program, one of the things that always stood out to me was when we had any conversation about diversity, disability was never included in that conversation. And likewise, when I took a course about, and I'm trying to think, the name was exceptional students or exceptional populations. That course was specifically about disability. However, it didn't really talk about cultural aspects of disability. It really was about impairment and accommodation. And so these were some of the things that were part of our conversation when we started to develop the courses in our new program. And so in our old program, of course, we look back to what we had been doing in our old programs to think about how we move forward. And we had a course on multicultural education. And we also had another course that was about inclusive practices. It had a different, more confusing name than that, but I put inclusive practices because I think that's generally how we think about that course. But what we talked about in bringing disability into conversations of diversity was that we really needed brand new courses here to do that. And I worked with Dr. James Fabianar, who's part of our program, and he had been teaching multicultural education. When we had conversations, we really had a hard time imagining how these two courses could become one course. We both had so much content. And if you can imagine, you know, if you have similar courses, blending them. So what we actually did was we took two courses and we built two new courses. Okay, and so one of those became diversity, inclusion, and schooling. And we started that with, saying disability is a natural part of diversity, but we really talked about all aspects of identity. And in this course, we asked students to really look inward, and they do a series of autobiographical assignments in this course to look at their own culture, to look at their own schooling experiences, to look at their own language experience. And alongside of that, we also talked about history and theory, and really a lot of the background to thinking about diversity and inclusion. And then in the next course is more of the action-oriented course. Okay, now you've thought these things through, what are you going to do in your practice? And so that course became equity and advocacy in education systems. And in this course, we focus a lot on asset-based practice and give students a chance to look at case studies and be able to think about the assets of students. In a former course that we taught that was in the along inclusive practices, we had used similar case studies, but they all revolved around disability. And so in this new course, we have very intersectional case studies, okay, to where these teacher candidates are thinking about all of the aspects of a student's identity and how context really plays into the experience that they're having in school. The students also choose a topic for an equity project. And so they're able to select something that they really care about, but then learn from each other as everyone has a different focus of their equity project. We also focus a lot on collaboration. And so part of the assignments in this class are around these case studies, and students work with the team to think about who are the students. And this kind of goes along with what students are asked to do in the Cal TPA with having focus students. So we asked them to look at 3 case studies and think through how they would support these students, how they would work with the families of these students. So we also, we used to add in the first semester with the diversity course, with the way we say we're having students look inward. In the second course, we're saying look outward, look, take a look at how you're thinking about students, how you're thinking about families and communities, and how you're thinking about educational systems and how they play into our advocacy for students. So I guess I could also talk about part of the challenge in bringing these together. One of those that I touched on was this, that we had 2 full courses that we were used to. We both liked the content we had been teaching before. And so this bringing them together was a challenge, especially looking for textbooks and readings that did what we wanted to do as far as look at the intersections. Okay, so one book that we really love is Nieto and Bode's Affirming Diversity, which is an excellent book, but it doesn't do justice to disability at all. We also, but we are using that book, and we're also using Sue Baglieri's book, Disability Studies in the Inclusive Classroom. And so those are 2 of the main texts we use, to where we're able to look at some of the themes that Nieto and Bode brings up, and then bring in what Sue Baglieri includes in her book about, the history of disability and more on collaboration and inclusive pedagogy. So we've been able to pull from different texts, but we kind of dream about having one text that would do this all. So if anyone has any insight or have heard of anybody who's doing that, it may take us a little bit of time to get around to writing that book, but it is in the works. So I guess some of the main things I would say is in these courses, we're really working to blur the lines between special education and general education and give our students a model for co-teaching. We do have a lot of conversation about our own identities and how we navigate schools and how schools treated us or dealt with our differing bodies. And so that's interesting to think about in terms of disability and race and gender. And we also do a lot of centering and recentering. So I had typically been teaching courses where I would ask students questions about what experience do you have with diversity? And so, or not with diversity, I'm sorry, what experience do you have with disability? Or what skills do you have related to this or that? And so when we bring these together, I change some questions to what experience do you have with disability and other forms of diversity? And so just by centering disability there, the responses are very different than if we had just started with the question of what experience do you have with diversity? And so we kind of play with that along the course of the semester and center and recenter different identity markers. And we also, I guess in this first class, we're thinking a lot about expectations that we hold, biases that we hold about particular groups, and also about belonging. So anyway, we also, one other thing that we've done, I had a section in earlier courses that I taught about disability culture. And so we struggled a little bit with how can I still teach this piece that I really love, that I think is exciting because so few students have interacted with lessons about disability culture. And so the way that we've continued to use that is that in the equity and advocacy course, we use it as an example of how a community has responded to deficit models. And so it becomes a model of that and an invitation to look at how other communities have responded or might respond to deficit modeling. So as we have moved into pandemic time, and we imagined it might happen at some point that we wouldn't have the flexibility to always co-teach. And so in the fall, we did need to teach separately. And so one of the things we did that really helped us out was we created some framing lectures for these courses. So both of our voices continue to be in the courses, even though we're not currently in the same courses right now. And that also gave us a chance to really practice this modeling of dialogue between the two of us. So anyway, that is a nutshell of what we've done in collaborating on these new courses. Rebekka.
Thank you. And yeah, so I am now going to just talk a little bit about more of the collaborative planning. And so I took 3 courses and then I built it into 2. So one of the courses from the original model was a course on assessment basically to transition, and then collaboration course and a behavior support course. And it became an assessment course on its own, and then also the positive behavior supports for families, schools, and community engagement. Mine was a little different because I actually collaborated with adjunct professors instead of a full-time professor. And it was exciting because I was able to actually, for the assessment course, it was a K-12 special education teacher, and we were able to kind of reimagine and use that really practical side along with the, meeting the TPEs and the research-based and, kind of pulling through with both of our skills. She was also a great partner because she worked at a bilingual school, so she had that lens as well. The other course, which I'm going to focus a little bit more on, was the positive behavior supports for family, schools, and community engagement. And there we were able to pull together a special educator, a general educator. The special educator is the same bilingual special educator, and then also a district representative. She's been in higher ed, but also an admin for DI. And then each one of us had different skills that really pertained to the course. So for example, the general educator has been giving professional development on restorative justice, which was part of or restorative practices, which was part of the course as well. And so we were able to really highlight the different expertise that each one of us had. The admin, had been doing a lot of work around diversity and equity, had been looking at things like school to prison pipeline. And so that was another exciting resurgence. Suzanne talked about textbooks, and once again, we couldn't really find the perfect textbook. So we did have a core textbook, but we actually rely a lot on readings, videos, websites. And so we've been kind of pulling together different resources, which has saved our students money too. So that was another positive. And then the idea was that we would plan out each one of the sessions together, that each one of our voices would be heard in the course, and that we would be modeling collaborative planning, collaborative teaching, calibration of grading assignments, and that the 2 courses are very practical courses as well. So it's we have the holistic behavior assessment report, which is a modified FBA, functional behavior assessment. And then we also have the holistic academic assessment report, which is the traditional assessment report, but really looking at from a holistic lens. So there is a culturally responsive statement that the students need to include in these to demonstrate how they looked holistic, along with looking at different holistic indicators or pulling together different data from different sources to write these reports. We reimagined the course with materials, activities, the calendar, modeling that collaboration, deciding on different speakers that we would have come. We would debrief often weekly, but it wasn't always needed that. With COVID, we did need the weekly because different things were coming up and we weren't quite sure, how the semester was going to go, what challenges our students would have because it was such a practical class. And then we collected anonymous midterm survey data, and then also the course evaluations at the end. So I think a lot of the lessons learned around the collaborating, with adjuncts who have full-time jobs and families, and some were in school as well, is really looking at the need for clear communication and transparency. you know, just to be very vulnerable, we did have some hiccups around that where, you know, some people weren't showing up to meetings, you know, they, you know, maybe changed assignments in the way that other people weren't, but didn't share that. And so there are, you know, we're still working out some of the hiccups, but this is also realistic to what it would look like if you're co-teaching or collaborating within a school, any school site or any workplace. The successes were definitely that we were able to utilize expertise and build expertise. So, you know, we shared all of, you know, I do a lot of the trauma-informed practices. And so I was able to share that in a hybrid model. So sometimes I had videos and then there were activities that the students could do. And then we also, I handed over the slide decks and activities for each one of the instructors to do with their individual classes. And so the idea is that next year, you know, when the class comes back around, that we won't be needing to, you know, build that expertise, that they'll have some of the tools and the resources because they've also gone through the modules and the activities. The challenges, of course, as always, are time. You know, we had, there was 4 of us, and you know, trying to find a time that worked for all 4 of us with the busy schedules for planning or check-ins was difficult. One person left for the summer and then, you know, missed, you know, a month of meetings and then came back, and it was about, you know, figuring out ways that we could all still come together. And then also the different styles. You know, we all have our different way of sharing information. And so one of the things that we had tried to do was build like a common slide deck. And that didn't always work for each one of the instructors. And so having that kind of common slide deck information and then allowing each person to really adapt it to whatever their personal presentation style is another area that we were able to address eventually. So that is it for me.
Thank you so much, Rebekka and Suzanne. I think that we're going to have Lynn Larson join us to explain a little bit about our Blackboard course.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We have a little added benefit for participating in our collaborative workshop series. We have set up Blackboard course sites with some additional resources for you, and we have an opportunity for you and a colleague to participate in developing an action plan around our workshop topics. And so if you could click on the class site, Amy, just to show them what it looks like. It's just set up as a typical Blackboard course for those of you who are familiar with that particular MLS, or yeah, LMS, sorry. So you can see we have a folder for workshop 1. We had a fantastic speaker in January, and we were able to record that presentation and have that recording available for you there. We also have the first part of the action plan that you and a colleague can also complete, as well as just a brief discussion board post. You can see our workshop 2 folder is set up as well. As soon as we have the recording available, I'll put the link for that in there as well. I'll upload our speakers' bios as well. All of our 3 speakers today, I'll make sure all that information is in there. And then the second part of the action plan that you can do with a colleague can be uploaded in that folder as well. So if you want to go back to the, yeah, so you can see there the workshop recording will be there, the discussion, and then the workshop 2 assignment, which is the second part of the action plan, can be uploaded there, just like your students do when they go into your online course shells. So as a little incentive for you to participate, if your institution or group chooses to participate in this, we have $50 gift cards for your participation in this work as an incentive and a thank you for being engaged with this work beyond attending the workshop today. So you can click on the link that is in the slide deck, and we'll also put it in the chat pod for you. You need to sign up for a free account, and then you can log into the class and access all of the materials that are there. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to now break into our working groups, and we have two parts. Basically, the first part is our group discussion. We have two definitions of, or at least ideas around, social justice and educational equity. One of the things that we have talked about as a group is the fact that people often define things like social justice in very different ways. And so we thought that we could take some time to kind of talk about the definitions that we have in our small groups around social justice and equity. And then these are the guiding questions that we have throughout this presentation. And so we have those also listed on the document, the discussion document, for our groups to really think about a little deeper. Can you go to the next slide, please? And then the action plan, as Lynn mentioned, we have $50 gift cards. If you submit your action plan to the Blackboard course, then you will get that. And this is really, we wanted you to be able to take the ideas that we have and apply them into our different sites. So if you have more than one person from your site, then you might want to work on the action plan together. Actually, Suzanne, Maya Kaliamper, and I worked on our action plan from the last group, and we were able to push it through with our department to create some dialogue around the intersectionalities and different opportunities for professional development that we have. This action plan, we're asking you to just, maybe come up with some objectives, measurable outcomes, strengths and assets, address the different obstacles, and then what action steps you need. And this could be something I loved how Lidiana talked about, using the mentorship program of the alumni. And so that could be something like that could be the alumni, and then just how would you go about creating that type of system. And we would like you to have the action plan submitted by March 31st. And you can actually, if you do did participate in our last event, workshop number 1, you can submit an action plan for both workshop number 1 and workshop number 2. We have 20 available, but there were a few extras that were still available from workshop 1. So we will have extras for workshop 2. So we hope that everyone will participate in submitting the action plans. Do you want to just do the last slide just so that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I know that some people had questions about the, who are they supposed to be doing these action plans with at your site or at your organization? And we left it really, really open. So the idea, the series is focused on critical collaboration, and the idea is that you're working together with somebody from your organization to make a plan to move forward. But we left it completely open about kind of who the team is that you're working with at your site. Thank you.
And just, we're going to break out into our rooms, and then we'll all leave from the room. So this is just just to let you know, we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rooms. So we can hopefully have some good discussion, and we've got our discussion prompts and action plan, and that we hope to see you at our next event, which I'm forgetting the date. I think it's 3/23, but I'm not 100% positive. But we do hope we will be sending you out more information about that and our speaker. And thank you for your time today. We've had fun. So.
You should see your rooms open.